What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. Going into r/AskReddit today, so let's get to it. Okay, so this one, I'm not sure how much all of you are going to appreciate it, but there were some really funny responses, and I just wanted to share it. So, the question was, lawyers of Reddit, what is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? And I'm sure we've all seen comedies and stuff like this, so. Opposing counsel. Isn't it true you hit victim in the face with a brick? Client. No, Marcus hit him with the brick. I hit him in the back of the head with a piece of wood. Dude. All you had to say was no, that was Marcus. A friend of mine is a lawyer, and he said that a client once turned up to court in the actual same outfit he was wearing in the burglary. When the CCTV footage came up in evidence, the client looked down to himself and was like, oh, crap. You think? Follow up on that. A friend of mine's client showed up to their court session with no shirt on at all. Luckily, she had her husband's dry cleaning in the car, and he was able to wear one of his. She truly wondered how he thought showing up half naked was going to convince the judge he was an upstanding member of society. Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to that as well. Unfair dismissal case. The client claimed to have been dismissed without reason or following procedure. After we had started the case, it comes out that not only was he given 3 written warnings, but he was also called in for a disciplinary hearing before his dismissal. Don't lie to your lawyer. I don't know why you would. Your lawyer's like the one person on your side in everything here. I mean, granted, you're paying him to be on your side, but yeah. Not a lawyer yet, but I clerked for a DA's office throughout law school. Obviously, we don't have clients, but I'll never forget this kidnapping case I worked on. It involved 2 Asian male defendants who were both the same age and looked relatively similar. Witness is on the stand and is asked to identify where the defendant who pushed an Uzi into his face is seated. It's clear the witness is having trouble differentiating the defendants. In a true moment of brilliance, one of the defendants raises his freaking hand and basically points to himself like, right here, bud. Hands down the dumbest crap I'd ever seen. I thought his defense attorney was going to have a brain aneurysm.
Hey, what about my Miranda rights? You're supposed to say I have the right to remain silent. Nobody said I have the right to remain silent.
Donkey, you have the right to remain silent. What you lack is the capacity.
I must hold on before I, too, go totally mad.
Shrek? Donkey?
Too late.
That Shrek 2 clip is the thing that's going through my head right now. That he filmed his offenses for his YouTube channel. The cops didn't even know. A witness brought it up on day 3 of the trial. It was a nice, quick change of plea that afternoon. I don't get it. Like those idiots that were licking Bluebell ice cream. Or that one moron who was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna open up Listerine and chug it right here in the store, then backwash. And then they all post it. Like, why? The whole point of crime is to try and stay anonymous and get away with it. It's a weird world we live in. I'm still a law student, and this happened during my first internship at a court. A girl, among other people, was charged with drug possession, but because she'd thrown away the drugs and the police couldn't prove she'd bought or owned the drugs, because it could have been any one of the other people as well who still had drugs on them, the judge ruled in dubio pro reo. He then asked if she wants to say/add something, and this girl asked if she could get her drugs back. The defense attorney looked like he was about to get a heart attack. It was a typical appointment/interview with the immigration committee in order to grant my client a residence permit. He was marrying a woman in my country with my country's nationality, and this is a legitimate reason to be granted a residence permit. So, it was a typical procedure. At least that's what I thought. The committee is bored to death and we all want to be over with it. So they ask him all the typical and boring questions like, how did they meet? Where were they going to live? They ask these things to identify white/false marriages. At some point, they ask him if he was married before and he says, yes, back in my home country, and I'm still married actually. Never got a divorce. WTF. I was stunned. Double marriage is forbidden in my country, and he never bothered to mention this detail to me, neither to the other lawyer when we asked him. He later told me he said the truth because he was afraid to lie in front of a committee. An honest and stupid man. I got all my money though, yet we had to find another way to gain a residence permit. I am actually a lawyer, but I was only watching this trial, not participating. So the case was that woman A had hit woman B in the head with a heavy beer pint at a bar, and woman B got pretty serious injuries. The defense claimed that woman A had not hit anyone with a pint, but instead had just thrown the pint into a random direction, and it happened to hit B in the head. Thus, it was an accident and not a battery. Well, the prosecution had a CCTV tape from the bar, and it was shown at the trial. And the tape clearly showed in HD as A walked behind B and smashed the pint to her head so hard that the pint shattered on impact. I looked at the defense lawyer and his jaw literally almost hit the table. The prosecutor also noticed this and asked something along the lines of, "Thrown, eh?" And the defense lawyer said that due to technical difficulties, he couldn't get the CCTV tape open on his computer when he was reviewing the evidence. Woman A was found guilty. So yeah, I was completely dumbfounded. I'm not an attorney, but that sounds like ineffective assistance of counsel. If he didn't go out of his way to try to get that footage open to mount a proper defense, that sounds like grounds for an appeal. But I could be wrong. Either way, why would you keep that from your attorney? He's trying to protect you. A client in a family law matter lied to me about using meth. Then used meth with the child in the room, and the ex got footage of it on the nanny cam, and then made excuses about why they couldn't do a drug test, then blamed me when they lost custody, despite the fact that they didn't show up to appointments or return my calls, so I couldn't prepare any court material. I dumped the client after that and left family law. Can't say I blame you. Follow up to that though, I'm a GAL, or gal. I called and texted the father of one of my cases around 10 times in the weeks before the hearing. He wouldn't call back. If he answered, he would say he was too busy to talk to me. A couple hours before the hearing, I was volunteering at my son's school for an event, and he texted me saying he was ready to talk. But I let him know that I couldn't call. When I got to court, I found him and introduced myself. I told him I would like to talk to him after the hearing, and he said, "Oh, you got time for me now." The judge awarded temporary custody to the child's grandmother. When we left the courtroom, he starts going off about how we are all unfair against fathers. Not only did the judge award custody to the grandmother rather than the mother, but he didn't really want to discuss his prior or current charges, including domestic violence, drug and gun charges that occurred in the presence of the children, lack of driver's license due to DUI, or refusal to submit to the court-ordered drug test. His lack of custody was due to my bias against dads. I mean, statistically, you can make the argument that women in a divorce or a custody hearing generally get more favorable treatment when it comes to the children. Again, statistically. But dude, no, you can't blame your lawyer having a bias against you when they tried and you're being absolutely uncooperative. Dude. Also, follow up to that, just for clarification for anyone. GAL is a guardian ad litem, for those unacquainted with the lingo. A GAL is an objective, impartial person whom the court appoints to act as a representative for the minor children in a contested custody proceeding, rather than for either parent. So, now you know. A defendant was written a ticket for using a cell phone while driving and defended himself by saying, "Your Honor, I wasn't using a smartphone while driving. I was actually using a flip phone." Guilty. I was in court once for a school journalism project, and there was a woman in court who had been arrested for weed and crack possession when she came to bail out her boyfriend from a separate arrest. Apparently, he called her from jail and told her to come bail him out and to bring some weed and crack. The guard overheard him, and it was recorded on the jail phone, so they arrested her when she showed up. I mean, dude, have you not watched, like, one crime show ever? Employment law matter. He claimed to have been unfairly dismissed over bogus performance management. The real reason? He organized via Craigslist to have someone collect a box of his mail material from a children's playground. There were explicit messages from him asking what they did with it. The employer provided us the messages. Edit, he was doing this on company time. FDA dismissed a guy for insider trading. He would access a database of drugs about to be approved, which nearly always caused stock to go up. He'd made millions buying stock in his family's name to cover his tracks. But he made a fatal mistake. He looked at the database and then bought stock with his work computer, which is owned by the FDA, and they could search without consent. You click a statement to that effect each time you sign on. If he'd waited and done it on his own computer, they'd have had to get a search warrant, a much tougher proposition. It's amazing how many times people forget that companies will just generally have access to your work computer, files, and internet history without you knowing. I mean, I can think of 3 or 4 cases on Forensic Files right now where that's what sunk them. Which, by the way, great show if you're interested in any of that stuff. Not a lawyer, I'm a law student. And not exactly what you asked for, but I felt like it fits here anyways. We read about a criminal case in which there wasn't enough evidence to convict the suspect, so the suspect was not guilty due to reasonable doubt. And he responded, "Thank you, Judge, I'll never do it again." DA went into appeal and got convicted. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, and he did clarify later on that double jeopardy didn't apply to the situation due to some specific circumstance, but I'm not going to get into that. You can look it up if you want. I'm a court-appointed attorney for qualifying individuals in family matters. Termination of parental rights case. I've been fighting to argue that this parent is stable, working lawfully, has a suitable apartment, doesn't need psychotropic meds anymore, and is ready to be a parent, etc. After a few months of negotiating with all the parties in Department of Children, Court Services, we have a pre-trial to try and convince the guardians. I meet with my client before the hearing to see if anything's changed. Nope, all good. Let's get my kids. Great, that's not happening today, but let's try. We get going into court. My client, who is super hot-headed and quick to anger, gets riled up and goes off on the guardians, screaming in open court. It doesn't end there, but she reveals that she's no longer working, she's no longer in the apartment, she doesn't want to have a relationship with the guardians despite her kids loving them, she won't send her kids pictures of the toys they miss and can't have, she plans on moving out of state, and thinks they can live as a family off of state aid when she gets them back. Oh, and she's 4 months pregnant. All this in a matter of 15 seconds. I was too shocked to even react. Speechless. Not the image of stability and parental fitness I've been trying to paint since last July. Edit to clarify, client was working really hard to get everything right, and legitimately had everything going for her prior to this hearing. I was not making false representations or trying to get a monster reinstated. This was a true bombshell as I did my due diligence to make sure things were on the up and up and statutory requirements were met. Things fell apart very fast, apparently. This was a very atypical situation. Parents typically do a really good job working hard to meet the requirements. Follow up on that one. A relative told me about a case where the mom's boyfriend she met through a wrestling chat room, this was in the 90s, murdered one of her kids. Police couldn't prove it, so he was never charged, but everyone knew he did it. So when mom comes to court to try and reunite with the kid who wasn't murdered by her boyfriend, guess who was sitting next to her the whole time? Yeah, she didn't get that kid back. Not my client, but the son of the opposing party, and presumably the party himself, lied about being blind to make himself seem more sympathetic as a witness. We didn't know either until he took the witness box. Their counsel asked him to take the oath, and he picked up the card and read it. That was the cherry on top of a series of ridiculous events. The judge dismissed the whole thing in our client's favor shortly after. I was a trainee at the time, but my boss, who was in her late 60s then, said it was the most ridiculous case she'd ever handled. Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, if that's the cherry on top of a series of ridiculous events, I really want to know what else happened there, because that just sounds like all sorts of shenanigans. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or uplifting AskReddit content, then go ahead and check out the playlist link in the description below. Now you guys go out there, have a great day, I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.